Well, howdy, everybody, and welcome back to another 5-Minute Bible Study. I hope the weather's nicer where you are. It's been rainy and cold today, but good day to complete 5-minute study videos and outlines indoors. Let's talk today about Numbers chapter 17. This is a somewhat shorter chapter, only 13 verses, but as always, let's start off with our characters. Our characters are Moses and Aaron. They are brothers, and they are the leaders, the God-selected leaders of the people of Israel. Moses serves kind of as the guy in charge and the guy who gets revelations and messages from God. Aaron is the high priest. Then we have the rebellious Israelites. These are some Israelites who, after the rebellion of Korah, which we talked about back in chapter 16, they decided that they still wanted to question the authority of Moses and Aaron. The events of Numbers chapter 17 took place while the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years, wandering in the desert as punishment for their faithlessness when God took them to the borders of Canaan. This would be approximately 1490 to 1450 BC. Moving over to our map, we have already talked about the children of Israel being camped in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. God told them to turn around from there and to head back into the wilderness, and that's where they were going to be for 40 years. Because this chapter is so short, only 13 verses, we only have one section. Aaron's Rod Blooms is the title. So following Korah's rebellion, and as a further sign that God had selected Moses and Aaron to be his leaders over the nation of Israel, God told Moses to collect 12 staffs, one from each of the heads of the tribes, and to put those staffs in the tabernacle. God was going to cause the staff of the man that he wanted to lead the priests to bud, or it says to sprout. Moses did as the Lord instructed, and he gathered these 12 staves. Aaron's staff represented the head of the tribe of Levi. Moses left these staffs in the tabernacle tent overnight, and in the morning he returned to find Aaron's staff had sprouted buds and blossoms and ripe almonds. So not even just almonds, but ripe almonds. Moses then brought the 12 staffs out of the tabernacle, and he showed them to the people, showed them God's miracle. And when they saw the miracle, they were convicted. They realized their sin of rebelling against Moses and against Aaron. Clearly, it was Aaron who God wanted to lead the priestly tribe, and they feared God's anger. God told Moses to keep Aaron's staff at the tabernacle as a reminder to the rebellious people and as a sign of his blessing on the household of Aaron. Today's application, I think, is very practical. As we discussed in chapter 15, God gave his people physical reminders to help them recall spiritual principles, like the tassels that they were supposed to put on their clothing. Aaron's rod is now a physical object reminding them of a spiritual truth, things like the Passover feast. Think of some ways that you can fill your house or your office or wherever you spend the majority of your time with things that remind you of God and of his principles and of his goodness. Put a picture on your wall maybe with a verse on it. Maybe it's a verse that you want to recall, that you want to apply better, you want to keep in mind. Buy a bracelet that has a promise of God on it. Maybe you struggle with anxiety or worry, and so you get a quote of what Jesus said in Matthew 6 about, don't worry, God cares for the flowers, he cares for the sparrows, he's certainly going to care for you. Get a tattoo that, no, just kidding. I just wanted to give my mother a heart attack because she'll probably be listening to this later. You can set a widget on your phone that's less permanent to remind you to pray at certain times of day because, the Lord knows that we all forget to pray as much as we should. Reminding ourselves repeatedly of God's promises, his laws, his grace, his wrath, his awesomeness is part of the reason that daily Bible study, daily Bible reading is important, because we need continual reminder. We always think that we'll remember, but of course we don't always. So if God thought that reminders were important, so should we.